For today's cup of coffee, we've got something that's of interest, and people may be going, what does this have to do with paranormal or supernatural? Well, I'm one of these people that truly believes that there is an entity behind a lot of the evil that's going on in our world today. I think a lot of it has to do with fallen angel technology, if you want to call them aliens. I think a lot of them, it's a matter of these interdimensional beings. And
could be.
I mean, we don't know exactly what these things are, where they're from.
Yeah.
We know that there are some that are good guys and there are some that are definitely not.
Yeah, right.
And that it's a matter of they hate humanity. People keep going, how can these people be this stupid? There's a difference between stupid and evil.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just can't wrap their head around what true evil is. We think we've seen it. But even with the atrocities that we have seen in human history, no, the forces behind those atrocities, we can't even fathom. We just can't wrap our heads around them.
Yeah.
So for me, these things very much have a paranormal and supernatural basis. That being said, we're going to discuss Operation Mockingbird.
Okay.
And
Nice.
the reason that people use the word allegedly,
It's for legal reasons.
absolutely it's for legal reasons. So, allegedly, there you go, that covers the whole thing. Allegedly.
This is all alleged. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Right. We're not here to diagnose, treat, anything
We are not
like
here.
that.
We are not here stating this is fact. This is just a theory.
This is why I give you sources, not just... If it's my random bullshit stuff, I will tell you it's my random bullshit stuff.
Once again, this is all just theory. We don't know this all for a fact.
Well, there are some things I do know.
For legal reasons. We do not claim this is fact for legal reasons.
This is why
alleged.
the sources. That's why I give sources, because if the source is incorrect, then that's on the source. That's how that works. That's why citations are a thing. They got the point that we're not doing this because we have sources. They did get that. That was what that long sigh was from Kid.
Sort of.
Anyhow, this comes from the website hiddentruths.com, and it's entitled Operation Mockingbird, CIA Control Over Mainstream Media News and Journalism. And they say Operation Mockingbird is a large-scale propaganda and media control program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, that began in the early 50s. Now, with that, I am going to... I will put a link in the description box that actually is a document. It's called theblackvault.com, and it does have the Freedom of Information request letter on there about Operation Mockingbird, and it does have the response from the government. Now, within that, we understand that there's a lot of information that is not going to be released to the public, even if you do have a FOIA request, because what they do, they label it as secret or whatever it is, so the public does not know.
Yeah.
Basically, ever. Mm-hmm. That, or they give you something that is so redacted, which means they have taken the magic marker and you might have 1 or 2 words per page.
A good example of redacted documentation, like in the SCP files or whatever like that, they always have some stuff that's redacted. Sometimes they have entire paragraphs that are alleged, that are like redacted.
Oh, I have. Well, even as far as with some of the requests to release information about UFOs and stuff, it was 1 or 2 words per page. And some of the stuff that is released is written in such an obtuse way that it makes no sense.
Yeah.
But with what was released, it does discuss, and it discusses with propaganda. and that it was indeed a government operation. Now, it claims it stopped in the 50s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But it didn't.
No, but as evidenced by our world today. And it said that the objective of Operation Mockingbird was to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes, typically to sway public opinion into either supporting a war agenda, or 2, creating and promoting smear campaigns, and 3, promoting disinformation as truth as necessary.
Okay.
The operation also funds student and cultural organizations and magazines as front organizations. Operation Mockingbird recruited leading American journalists into a propaganda network and oversaw the operations of front groups. CIA support of front groups was exposed in 1967 Ramparts magazine article that reported that the National Student Association, the NSA, received funding from CIA. All this is lots of alphabets.
Yeah.
If it's got lots of alphabets, beware, beware.
Beware.
In the 1970s, congressional investigations and reports also revealed agency connections with journalists and civic groups. Senator Frank Church held Senate committee hearings in 1975-1976 with the NSA and CIA to discuss media control and censorship within the United States of America. According to the Congress report published in 1976, quote, the CIA currently maintains a network of several hundred foreign individuals around the world who provide intelligence for the CIA and at times attempt to influence opinion through the use of covert propaganda. Mm-hmm. These individuals provide the CIA with direct access to a large number of newspapers and periodicals, scores of press services and news agencies, radio and television stations, commercial book publishers, and other foreign media outlets, unquote. Senator Frank Church argued that misinforming the world would cost American taxpayers an estimated $265 million a year. That was in 1976.
Yeah.
So, by today's standards, that's billions.
Billions of dollars. 1 million.
Yeah, really. And in 1948, Frank Wisner was appointed director of the CIA's Office of Special Projects, which was OSP. Soon afterwards, OSP was renamed the Office of Policy Coordination, OPC. This became the Espionage and Counterintelligence branch of the Central Intelligence Agency. Wisner was told to create an organization that concentrated on propaganda, economic warfare, preventative direct action, including sabotage, anti-sabotage, demolition and evacuation measures, subversion against hostile states, including assistance to underground resistance groups, and support of indigenous anti-communist elements in threatened countries of the free world, end quote. Now, that depends on whose definition of whatever.
Yeah.
And the definition defines by whatever ruling class is in control at the moment, which it's all the same.
Yeah. It's all the same. If it's rich people, they're always evil.
Well, no, that is not so. There are a lot of wealthy people that do things with their wealth. It's not a sin to be wealthy. It's a matter of what you do with that wealth.
Well, most of them use it for evil.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know that. As evidenced by, there are some good people in the world. And sometimes these are the ones you never know their name. That's just like the truly evil ones. You don't know their name.
No.
Because they've got other people that they throw out there as the face of whatever, because somebody needs a face of a villain.
Yeah.
It says later that year, Wisner established Mockingbird, a program to influence the domestic and foreign media. Wisner recruited Philip Graham from the Washington Post to run the project within the industry. According to Deborah Davis, and must be her book, Catherine the Great, she stated, by the early 1950s, Wisner owned respected members of the New York Times, Newsweek, CBS, and other communications vehicles, end quote. In 1977, Rolling Stone alleged that one of the most important journalists under the control of Operation Mockingbird was Joseph Alsop. whose articles appeared in over 300 different newspapers.
Holy hell.
Well, and that's what happens when you've got, instead of local journalism, local TV stations, radio stations, and stuff like that, all that has become syndicated. And I'll get to that here in just a moment.
Okay.
In 1953, the network was overseen by Alan W. Dulles, director of the CIA. By this time, Operation Mockingbird had a major influence over 25 newspapers and wire agencies. These organizations were run by people with well-known, now remember this is 53, right-wing views. Because over the years, the sides flipped in their views.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like in the 70s and stuff like that, the Democrats were more for the working people, and the Republicans were big government and this and that and the other. And in today's world, all that has changed.
Yeah, it has.
Which we very well may have gone into some kind of alternate reality.
Well, more than likely.
There'd be more evidence of that. And since the 1950s, CIA started recruiting journalists, editors, and students in order to write and promulgate false stories. The CIA stories were entirely propaganda, and their employees were paid huge salaries in order to promote such fake news. Now, this was before internet.
Don't believe the hype.
Well, yeah. This was before internet.
Yeah.
A free and independent press was and is a key to the maintenance of democracies worldwide and provide a check and balance against government corruption and wrongdoing. That was the whole basis of the press. That was one of the main things as far as the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And so it was a matter of the people being able to see the workings of government and report them to other people. That's why at one point it was illegal, propaganda was illegal. Until we have from the Goldwater, and this is by Ernest Jones, this was written on 12/26/2016. Obama signs the anti-propaganda bill into law with 2017 NDAA.
Wow.
And he says, as the Americans were making merry and enjoying the holidays, the outgoing President Obama saw an opportunity to quietly sign the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act into law. The law authorizes a $611 billion budget spending for the military, inclusive of the dangerous Counter-Disinformation and Anti-Propaganda Act, which has been very controversial. Because, again, this is word salad. This is psyops. Just about anything that they say is anti or whatever, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And it says the bill is purely formulated to crack down on free speech and independent media under the guise of fake news and propaganda on the internet. And
which is such bullshit.
Well, the new legislation will give the government the power to crack down with impunity any media that it deems to be spreading propaganda. The legislation will also fund the counter-propaganda endeavors. This is purely meant to choke the alternative media and independent journalists who are not blinded by the malicious oligarchs. Ask Project Veritas and James O'Keefe about that.
Yep.
You know, and the fact that they had the news media at the time that he was, I mean, he's a journalist. And that when they had seized his phones and stuff like that, it had contacts, it had, conversations with his attorney, which that is attorney-client privilege, all these things like that. It's to shame, humiliate. They did the same thing to Oliver Stone. That CNN just happened to be walking by his house.
Yeah, totally.
When all that happened.
Yeah, isn't that a coincidence? There's no such thing as coincidences, though.
Right. This new law is endangering the right to free speech and freedom of the press as guaranteed by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. There have been several cases where the National Defense Authorization Act has been used to disguise legislation covertly. In 2012, Obama signed a law that enabled the government to indefinitely detain American citizens without a jury or judge. This is why they're able to hold these people for ridiculous amounts of time, basically indefinitely. So that's why we do have U.S. citizens that very much could be considered political prisoners at this point.
Yep.
It says the following year, Obama enabled the government to legally produce propaganda by signing the NDAA bill that packaged an end to the Smith-Mundt Act, and I'm not familiar with that, and I should have looked that up, that prevented the government, okay, that's what it did. It prevented the government from unleashing propaganda to its citizens. Obama has simply set the stage for the U.S. government to crack down on every media outlet that it deems as foreign propaganda.
So basically anything that goes against their stuff.
Right. You remember the Russia thing?
Mm-hmm.
That's why they did that, because they wanted to make sure that it didn't matter whether it was or not, because it had the label of another country attached to it.
Yeah.
Then it was okay that they could do this. They could claim it was foreign propaganda.
Bullshit. And it's all
they're
bullshit.
not even trying to hide it at this point.
They're not, but nobody cares at this point. They really
There's
don't.
a lot of people that care. There's a lot of people that care. It's just your age group. Oh my God. I pray that there are people in your age group that are getting a clue, buying a vow, doing something.
I hope there is.
So anyhow, and then from the FCC website, and that's the Federal Communications Commission sets limits on the number of broadcast stations, radio and TV, an entity can own. As required by Congress, the FCC reviews most of its media ownership rules every 4 years to determine whether the rules are in the public interest and to repeal or modify any regulation it determines does not meet this criteria. Details of the current ownership rules are summarized below. Now, this was changed. I was trying to think, and I was actually trying to look and see. Some of this stuff was deregulated in the 80s as far as who could own what and how much. And I don't think it was Reagan that totally did all this stuff, because it's been more recent as far as the ownership. Now, that's one of those would have to ask your father. He used to be up on all that.
Yeah.
Dual television network ownership. Currently, FCC rules effectively prohibit a merger between any two of the big four. Now, think of this. The
What?
big four, and that the big four are ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC. So some of these people that think, oh, well, Fox is different,
No. That's
No.
the Illuminati. Illuminati.
Well, you've got some that it's controlled opposition to make it look like it's different, but y'all know. And local television multiple ownership, an entity is permitted to own up to 2 television stations in the same designated market area, the DMA, if either the service areas known as the digital noise limited service contour of the stations do not overlap, or at least one of the stations is not ranked among the top 4 rated stations on the DMA-based audience share. So in other words, it's like you've got within a market, you can't have both stations, ABC. You've got to, and it's all the same. We know it's all the same.
Yeah.
But it's as long as the letters are different, they say that it's okay.
My God.
Then
and for heaven forbid anyone else make their own network.
And then, as far as local radio ownership, limitations on the number of radio stations a single entity may own in an area are based on a sliding scale that varies by the size of the market. Okay, in a radio market with 45 or more stations, an entity may own up to 8 radio stations. That's the reason you've got these broadcasting groups that own everything.
Yep.
But it says no more than 5 of which may be in the same service, either AM or FM. In radio market, which has between 30 and 44 radio stations, an entity may own up to 7 radio stations, no more than 4 of which can be in the same service. Also, in a radio market hosting between 15 and 29 radio stations, an entity may own up to 6 radio stations, no more than 4 of which may be in the same service. And also in a radio market with 14 or fewer radio stations, an entity may own up to 5 radio stations, no more than 3 of which may be in the same service, as long as the entity does not own more than 50% of all radio stations in that market. Mm-hmm. Now, what it used to be was that you could own, I think it was one major within a market and one small one.
Yeah.
Or you could own like 2 small ones. Mm-hmm. And that gave these smaller independent stations sort of a fighting chance. Mm-hmm. But when they did this, that's a reason that...
That completely screwed them out.
Well, that's just like, I think it's Holston Broadcasting Group in this area. Uh-huh. They bought up everything. That you've asked before, why are there, you either have classic rock, you have country, you've got some of these, area, yeah. That's somewhere in the middle, that's why. Because it's the same people, they own everything. They've got the same programming. It doesn't, they might have a slightly different rotation of songs.
Mm-hmm. But it's basically the same.
It is. Same thing with the news. It's the same script regardless of what station it's on.
I mean, there's literally been evidence of people, like different stations, basically at the same time, wherever, literally saying the same thing.
Exactly.
The exact same verbiage.
Because it is the same script. It's not a matter of local news or anything like that anymore. And then you've got a lot of the stations that what they wanted to do, going back to them buying up these things, what they would do is buy up some of these stations, and they would say they would make it go dark, which means that the station, they just shut it down.
Yeah.
Now, there are regulations that you can't just close down a station. You have to, after a period of time, without letting somebody know. Mm-hmm. And also you have these licensing fees that are ridiculous.
They're expensive as hell. That was like even licensing fees for certain songs or whatever.
Right.
And some radio stations found a way behind it. And that was when we were visiting Orlando. Mm-hmm. And an Ariana Grande song came on, and I was like, this doesn't sound right. They pitched her. Mm-hmm. They pitched her or something like that.
Right.
And I was right, because I listened to the regular song later, and they pitched it up at least three levels.
Right. Now, BMI is one of the big groups that you had to pay royalties and stuff to. Mm-hmm. And instead of them putting that on a sliding scale, that if you've got a small independent station versus one of these that's mega market stations, it makes a huge difference.
Oh, yes.
Even as far as the advertising and stuff. And there was one of the things that I was, one of the articles that I was reading, and they were talking about how that harms small radio stations and stuff. Mm-hmm. If I can find that, if I didn't close out that tab, I'll include that one also.
Yeah.
When they do the syndicated stuff, that was what I ran up against. I hated it. Hated it. Still hate it.
So what is the syndicated stuff?
That is where you have got this, at a certain point in time, you don't even have a live DJ. It's coming in off of the internet or whatever, mm-hmm. and it's just, it has nothing to do with local radio.
No.
And I have had that since I got out of radio, and that's been a long time at this point. Because that was what my love was. I loved radio. I loved music. And as far as providing a service to the community. Mm-hmm. Because it's a cool thing when you get to talk about somebody's church going to do something, or, some kid won whatever in sports, or that's what makes community.
Yeah.
You don't get any of that anymore, because I don't give a damn what somebody in California is talking about. I want to know what somebody else here in Southwest Virginia is talking about.
Yep.
if there is a weather event or anything like that, you can't even find that information on local radio now.
Not even AM stations?
Possibly AM stations, but a lot of the AM stations, they've even gone to syndication because they don't. And it was interesting because they didn't want personalities, they didn't want them to be disc jockeys anymore. They wanted them to be radio personalities.
Yeah.
Because stations, when you had a good disc jockey that people identified that station by that disc jockey, that gave that disc jockey some power.
Yeah.
And they didn't want that. They wanted it to be to where people could be replaced easily. Yeah.
Well, guess what? That stuff's going to change pretty soon.
Well, I don't. That's one.
It'll change back pretty soon.
You know, we've got like podcasts and different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also when you're one of the little guys, one of the micro minis, you're still fighting the Goliaths.
Well, yeah.
But you know, hell, stay in the fight. Anyhow, as far as national television ownership, there is no limit on the number of television stations a single entity may own nationwide, as long as the station group collectively reaches no more than 39% of all U.S. TV households. For the purpose of determining compliance with this national television ownership rule, television stations operating on UHF channels, which is 14 and below, are attributed with only 50% of the number of TV households in the DMA, as opposed to 100% of the number of households attributed to stations operating on VHF channels, such as 13 and above. This is known as the UHF discount. Unlike the rules discussed above, the National Television Ownership Rule is no longer subject to FCC's quadrennial review. So we all know there's statistics and then there's damn statistics.
Yeah.
Which is like lies and damned lies. We have all seen
damned lies.
Somebody manipulate the statistics on everything today.
Yep.
Everything.
They really do.
And the fact that they're saying, oh, we're not even going to check on them.
No.
Because they're the ones that's helping these people lie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it says the elimination of broadcast station cross-ownership rules. In 2017, now we discussed all this and who did this in 2017, the commission eliminated its rule that had previously prohibited common ownership of a full power broadcast station and a daily newspaper if the station's contour defined separately by type of station. It completely encompassed the newspaper's city of publication and the station and newspaper in the same relevant Nelson market. At the same time, the commission also eliminated the radio television cross-ownership rule, which had restricted the common ownership of broadcast radio and television stations located in the same market. These two rules, the newspaper broadcast cross-ownership and radio television cross-ownership rules, were eliminated due in part to the growth in the number and variety of sources of entertainment, news, and information in the modern media marketplace. Bullshit. That's the reason that they absolutely freak out when you've got people on, if it's social media, thinking for themselves. If you've got like the independent channels, that's the reason that these people were getting canceled. If you think that they don't own things in, the Twitter sphere and the TikToks and stuff like that, sure, everything.
Yep. But then again, there's people, just regular people like you and I, that literally cancel people online for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, that's their hobby, is to cancel people for literally nothing. Just because they obviously have nothing better to do.
Because they're bitter?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry, life ain't working for them.
Like, people literally started canceling Britney Spears again, and she literally just got free. But because Jeffree Star sent sent her some makeup, and she enjoyed it. She actually liked it, and he was like, hey, thank you, Jeffree Star, for sending me this makeup. People dragged her in the comments so much to the point that she deleted the post.
Can you not turn the comments off on that shit?
She was getting messages, she was getting comments, everything, which they literally just, helped Britney get free, and yet they still don't want her to think for herself.
Well,
that's insane.
Sure, these people that are doing this stuff, as far as, do they not understand they're just as bad as her father?
Exactly. Nobody understands that, apparently.
Sometimes people forget.
Or they just don't give a fuck.
They forget that there are actually people behind the words on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
Or the voices on a screen, or whatever. These are actual people. They're fallible. They're not gods. They're not demigods.
Exactly. And people, for some reason, tend to idolize celebrities in this god status, but it's not how it is, because they're literally people that just got lucky or got bought.
Well, part of that has to do with the fact that you had this push for people to get rid of any kind of religious faith. And so it is a matter that they have replaced people for God. And, that's the thing about being a people. We're fallible.
Mm-hmm.
And then when their version of God does not live up to their expectations, they act surprised. And then they act angry.
I mean, people get angry with the actual God every day.
Well, yeah, but it's one of those that we understand. When we... petulant children, I act like a petulant child frequently.
Me too.
And I'm grateful that he is...
merciful
and mature.
Mm-hmm.
Now that doesn't mean that every now and then he doesn't thump me and go, enough, look what you're doing, look what this can cause. And I'm grateful for it. I may not be grateful at the time because, again, petulant child.
Yeah.
Now if you persist in doing something that's stupid, now he'll swat you. Now I tell you, you do not want to be in that spanked category, because
that's a rough category.
Well, but it's also one of those, even that's out of mercy.
Yeah.
Because part of what's going on in our world today is because people have not been parented. And it doesn't...
Yeah, that's very much true. People don't want to parent their kids anymore. They want to plop them in front of a screen, and that's it.
Right. And that also, when you've got governments and stuff that are saying, oh, you can't do anything to... have consequences. These children, you've got to let them run wild and let them do whatever. That's to the child's destruction.
There's a difference between, spanking a child.
Right.
Like just giving them a
swat on the bottom.
A swat on the bottom, and beating them.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
Sure,
and for some reason, people don't understand the difference.
Well, no, it depends on
And they use that as an excuse to beat their child.
Well, there's a lot of people that they're afraid to touch their child after that.
Mm-hmm.
But now I will tell you this. Time out, a lot of times, very much can be effective.
Having them sit in a corner for about 5 minutes.
And, well, it's 5 minutes per year.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to sort of... It's very difficult to get a 2 or 3 year old to sit down, period.
For 13.
But what you do, if the
15.
child gets up, you pick the child up, you put them back down. It's like, no. And you can sit there and go, you've got these many minutes left, this many minutes left. I used to do it. It's like, okay, you're going to have to sit there for 15 minutes. How long is 15 minutes? It's half of an episode of SpongeBob. Yeah. They got that. They had that concept. But to, and then as they get older, to take things away, that is most effective.
Yes.
To sit there and go, oh, I will take the laptop. I will take the phone.
Yes,
I will turn the internet off.
You can do that, but also don't destroy your child's property, because then that just says, okay, they're going to destroy my property. They're not going to be respectful of my property, right. So why should I be respectful of theirs?
Well, because
there are parents that always take it too far.
Sure. Some of them, but not a lot of them. But it's also one of those, I don't know what is wrong with anybody that would give a kid, and I don't care if 16, 17, 18 is still a kid. At 18, they can buy their own shit. a device that costs 100, 200 more, and then complain when that child is a child and the device gets damaged.
No, once they turn 16, you give them a flip phone. Like a $20 flip phone.
You know,
like,
maybe just for
like, there you go.
Emergencies.
You can text your friends, you can call your friends, whatever, and you can call emergency if you need help, and you can call us. You can call the parents.
Yeah. You can actually limit the numbers that can be called with some of these phones.
Yeah.
You can do that.
I think if they do something bad, limited it. Tell them, hey, because you did this, your access to this phone is going to be limited. You're only going to be able to contact us for a certain amount of time.
You also need to explain to them every text, every email, every phone conversation is, honest to God, saved. Yeah.
It's like, don't send information that you will regret down the line.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it's like, just because you're paranoid does not mean that they're not out to get you. And that was the Lalonde brothers that said that. That, or if you're not paranoid, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
So that's the world today. Which is, if that's more scary than any kind of it is supernatural. But I would rather have shadow creature with red eyes. You know?
I would rather just have a blob phone floating in my window, but you know.
Those don't bother us anymore to sit there and go, no.
I'm just like, okay, whatever.
But again, even if it is like David against Goliath, that does not mean that we can sit down. That means that we go out, we pick up the stones.
Yep.
Let me tell you why he picked up more than one stone. Because Goliath had brothers.
Yeah.
Playing ahead.
Yep.
So, interesting things.
Yep.
So, if you've got paranoid. If you've got paranoia, let us know.
Are you paranoid?
Would you like to be more paranoid? Because I've got other things to share with you. If you've had experiences with the paranormal and or supernatural experiences with UFOs, aliens, cryptids, if you're aware of some of these other operations and projects and stuff like that I might not be, if you've got local, regional, family, myths, legends, any of that stuff, email me at cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com.
Yep.
And pray for one another.
Yep.
And we will get through this one way or the other.
Absolutely. This too shall pass.
Sure. Know that you're appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to have coffee with us and pondering great ponderings.
Don't forget to like, share, comment. That comment one is important. And most of all, subscribe.
I think there's one much more important than the comment.
Which one?
I think that's for these people to understand that they are loved.
Yes.
You know. That
I meant for like our analytic type thing.
I don't care about analytics. You think I ever look at that stuff? Never.
I do.
Never.
I want this channel to be popping. I want it to be one of the most popular podcasts, just like Frenemies.
No. But I want everybody to know that regardless of what they've been through, what they're going through, that they're not here by accident.
Yeah. No one's here by accident.
And that they are loved, because there's so many people that they don't feel loved. They don't think they're worthy of love. And it's like, I want anybody that's taken the time to just stop by and, like I said, and share a cup of coffee.
Yes.
To know that somebody gives a damn. That's a very simple thing. And it's like, you know, they want to email us and just say, hey, thank you for letting me know that you give a damn. You'll get a response.
Yeah, she's really good at responding. I don't check the email, so.
I communicate with people. That's part of what I do. Sometimes, usually.
I'm just a lurker. I don't usually comment, and yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to people.
I got social anxiety, so I don't.
Oh, bullshit.
I do.
Anyhow.
I'm an extroverted introvert.
So you all have a beautiful, blessed day, and we'll see you on the next cup. Bye.
Bye. Don't be too paranoid.